Morning, everybody. Thank you for being patient and waiting for the last meeting to end. I appreciate you taking, being patient with it at least. Anyway, does everybody have an agenda? All right, so we'll start. I think we'll go through introductions just because we haven't met in person for a little while, and we'll go through. I'm Tim Kubrick with Labor Relations.
Washington, General Manager of Operations.
Technician 1.
Sean Tyree, School Food Service Manager.
Alondra Bell, School Food Service Manager.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carrie Alderman. I'm bus driver 2 at East Transportation.
Sandra Joseph, bus driver at Royal Palm. Good morning, my name is Julia Reddick. I'm with Safety and Training.
I can't write now.
Good morning, my name is Simon Lopez, Shop Professionals.
Good morning, Desmond Thomas, in charge.
Good morning, Don Barrett, paraprofessional 2. Good morning,
Good morning, Ronald Laporte.
Good morning, Garrett Knight, bus driver, East Compound.
Good morning, Joseph Brenner, SEIU negotiator.
Maggie Prieto, General Manager, School Food Service.
Good morning, Allison Momblo, Director of School Food Service.
Good morning. MJ Steele, Director for the Department of Early Childhood Education.
Morning, Joseph Sanchez, Chief Operating Officer.
Good morning, Jimmy Middleton, Senior Attorney, Office of General Counsel.
Good morning, Mark Mitchell, Director of HR.
Heather Frederick, Chief Financial Officer.
Mason Marshall, Director of Maintenance and Plant Operations. Kate Shaw, Admin Assistant, Labor Relations.
All right. Well, thank you. And again, good morning, everybody. Welcome. On the agenda, I have starting off with SEIU to present salary proposals. If you're ready.
We are ready.
Okay.
And the horrified look on my face was I printed, I think, 21 copies, and there's more than 21 people here. So we might have to share it.
Packed house. We could share.
Share. Give you that. That's regular. And then follow that with ECP para. And then supervisory. Send it your guys' way. Here's a para. Yeah, I can share one.
I won't have time. Well, maybe we'll do it after.
You'll see top header.
Share one.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Is this the ECP?
Thank you so much.
Your para?
Do not have the para. Is that the para?
Your para right here.
Oh, that right there. Thank you.
I got 2 more supervisory if anybody needs one.
Take one.
Do you have this?
Advisory is, yeah.
All right. I assume folks can either double up or we can just obviously walk through it. It's obviously 3 different units, 3 different proposals. They're substantially the same. They mean exactly the same thing in the units. I will note that the supervisory unit doesn't have a lot of folks under 15, so it's going to be probably a quick, easier conversation regarding that. So before you, you'll see a very aspirational proposal on behalf of the union to the school district to do a number of things. We want to encompass the fact that the district obviously has to compete against other market area employers, both public and private sector. And obviously, we've seen, I think we've mentioned this before, an inflation rate, which I'm sure you're aware of about 10% in the last calendar year. Now, we're trying to do something that kind of equalizes the increase for everyone. As you'll see, in typical years, the union and the district come to agreements on percentage-based increases. But what we're attempting to achieve here is that in recognition of that, everybody has been working this past couple years, a very difficult couple years, COVID, with inflation on top of it, and they're getting the sort of pull from outside jobs. For example, if you look at transportation, there's, it's difficult to recruit folks, it's difficult to keep them. What we're trying to do is sort of equalize that increase and, impact folks in this sort of the same way. Now, the difficulty on my end, and probably on your end as well, is it's difficult to cost out exactly the impact to the budget for Palm Beach schools, simply put, because you've got employees who work 4-hour days, 6-hour days, 5-hour days, 8-hour days. Some work 180 duty days, some work 192, some work a full 12 months. I have sort of rough and dirty in my mind, if we, based off of what I think people are scheduled, cost impact, which I believe is about $31 million. That's just simply taking the amount of workers and assuming about $4,500 of impact to each worker. So obviously, the district's probably got a little bit of sticker shock, saying, hey, that's a pretty aggressive proposal on behalf of the union. But what we're attempting to do is to try to figure out how we can keep the talented people here while recruiting other talented people to come join them and alleviate some of the concerns of the district in terms of recruitment and retention. I did have, you'll see, if you look through the proposals, in recognition that the state is mandating that all employees must earn $15 an hour minimum by the start of the school year next year, we're trying to figure out, when is a good time to implement that based on making sure that the district is in compliance.
It's actually by October 1st, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's funny because, I was with Pinellas last week, and they said, we're looking at August 10th. So there's a lot of trying to figure out when exactly that's going to have to happen.
Well, just to clarify, what I mean is that the state requires you by October 1st. It doesn't mean that, you can't do it sooner.
Agreed. So obviously, I don't expect a robust response right now, other than if you want, I will say this, if you want to just sign off on it right now, we'd be happy. We'd be happy to ratify in the next 24 hours. Anybody not sign in yet? I'll leave it up here. Do you have any questions about the proposals?
It seems like they're all similar.
Yeah.
So it's all the same, increasing by $3.25 per hour. And then with those that are below the $15 an hour, and so equating to the $15 an hour, if it's less than $3.25 to get to the $15 per hour, then it would be at least that amount.
Yeah, so the easiest way that I could explain it is that where everybody would get $3.25, right? And then, in addition, if you were not making enough that your base wage rate If, say, for example, you're making 11. If you're going to 11, you go to 1425. In addition to that, you would move that classification, the minimum of the class, and the, we would want the max of the class also to move correspondingly. But it's basically to encompass that everybody gets a minimum of 325.
Okay.
And we did strike out much of the language that is just referencing, historical implementation. I struck that out, recognizing that there's going to be instances that we, just want to do cleanup.
On the, let's see, is it on all of them? On the last, on the regular, at the last page, you have section 12, a retention incentive.
Yeah, that was already presented. I believe it was December the 14th.
Right, it was the first one, I just didn't know it. I thought that when we discussed that there was maybe a revision you were going to make or something like that.
Honestly, if we were able to implement, everything economics is going to be tied into everything economics. So we have our original proposal still on the table, which we think obviously would accomplish having folks hit specific benchmarks of years. Say you hit 5 years, you get something, 10 years, you get another, 15 years, et cetera. That's still on the table for us. But in terms of our across-the-board increase, this is what we're seeking.
Got it.
In front of you.
All right, we will review these. All right. So on our side, we have a couple things to revisit before we get into Ms. Frederick's presentation. There was one requested change. It's very minimal. It is under standby duty. One thing that the school food service requested is that standby duty just says that an employee assigned to the Department of Facilities Services, who is designated as a standby employee, school food service would like it to also say assigned to the Department of Facilities Services and school food service, or school food service.
Or designee, or the appropriate designee, meaning giving the ability for that department to ask others to basically make that.
Right, so the reason for this change is originally the people who were performing this duty were under facilities, and then they moved under school food service. So it doesn't, say that that it's their department, but it really is.
Sure.
So we just want it's really more of a clarification, just a change in, some structure.
Yeah, so it's effectively just cleanup. It's
Yeah,
based on,
pretty much.
you've got a new department assigning the work.
Right. So, and then next, I'll pass these out. We have an update from Ms. Steele on the ECP para out of classification. She's written up some language that we think would meet the what we're both trying to get to. So if you'd like to review that now, we can.
We'd love to. And that would be an ECP para proposal from the district, everyone.
This is the one where coverage, providing coverage when there's the teacher is either absent or the position is vacant.
Correct. Yeah. Do you have it up here, or?
No, it's being,
okay, gotcha.
it's coming.
No problem.
Okay. So, as we've discussed in previous sessions, we are receptive of this, and we recognize the need for it. So what Ms. Steele has put together is basically some just very clear language so that we know exactly how this is supposed to happen when there's a need for it. Where in the first, where's my notes? In the first section, under proposed new language by the, thank you. Under the proposed new language by the Department of Early Childhood Education, the first paragraph there is when the position is vacant. So there's a little bit different process when it's vacant, meaning it can start right away. You know, we're not looking for the typical out of classification language where it starts 10 days into the assignment, right?
Sure.
So if the position's vacant, she's interested in allowing these people to receive additional compensation right away.
Immediately, cool.
Yes. Okay. The second paragraph under that section is when the teacher is absent. Now, we still do want to stick to the 10 days, and if it reaches 10 days, then we would go back to day one with the supplement. But we would not be, you know, I know it was another proposal about reducing the time period. We had some concerns with doing that, but we are willing to bring it, you know, as soon as we hit 10 days, go back to day one when that's happening. The concern we had with 5 was that if somebody maybe takes a vacation, you know, takes a week off, they have to go somewhere, then it's initiating these things. And I understand it's more work. It's just, it was a lot more overhead is trying to keep track of all this, keep it consistent across the district, so.
Yeah, if I remember, our proposal is to go from 10 to 5.
Correct, yeah. So, and then at the bottom there, one thing that we thought we had previously considered as not possible due to some of the state rules was allowing a paraprofessional to lead the classroom. And, you know, provided that the employee has the qualifications to serve as an early childhood professional and meets the Florida Division of Early Childhood Professional Development requirements for a VPK instructor, we're willing to include them in that supplement as well. Make sense?
Yeah, and I guess, you know, just kind of going off this, it says to be eligible for this payment, the early childhood professional must meet the Florida Division of Early Learning Professional Development requirements for a VPK instructor. I assume the district has all of the documentation for each and every one of our folks, and it's sort of readily available.
It is.
And obviously for my ECP para crew, we'll talk about it, you know, when we caucus. And if you have any questions specifically, feel free to, you know, weigh in on those specific issues.
The question that I have is, it'll go back from the day that the person actually was working in the position as the certified teacher?
Yes. Upon ratification, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And I know that, you know, sort of, if you looked at our proposal up top here, you know, we tried to reference the completed lesson plan to act as documentation, because I know that during the course of a year, especially if you've got different assignments, different supervisors assigned to the workers, there's not always the clarity of when that occurs, and we're trying to figure out how can we best streamline that process to show today's April 19th, this is when effectively the clock would start.
Right.
Now, if the question I have on that is, when those lesson plans are completed, are those submitted like electronically or anything that goes into a record? Meaning, do you keep your daily lesson plans from your ECPs? No, okay.
Not centrally.
Not centrally, but within the school or the department? Okay.
Yes. So your question is, how do we catch it so that nobody slips through the cracks?
Exactly,
Right?
yeah.
Okay. I understand that was something that Ms. Steele and I discussed, actually, to make sure. So might be something we have to work a little further on, but I know that her team is very aware when a position is vacant, meaning somebody has to be running the classroom. So we can work together on that to make sure that, you know, someone who is due this supplement doesn't miss out on it.
Agreed.
Ms. Steele, any further comment on that?
No.
Okay.
Okay. We'll caucus and talk about it, or if we have time today, you know. If we don't have time today, we'll come back with it. But I appreciate the proposal.
Okay. On the tools allowance, a question that came to me was regarding transportation helpers. That was a group you were seeking to add to this. My question is, I guess, do they have to bring or purchase the same tools as those who are all listed in that language before them?
I know that from what I'd heard, they do bring some of their own tools. I don't know if they have to have the full amount that a regular mechanic would, but anybody from Fleet can speak to that. Alex, perhaps? The question is, do transportation helpers, are they subject to bringing their own tools?
Okay, the question is, they used to have the tool allowance for them to be able to start getting prepared eventually for those they want to, escalate as in the future to be a mechanic. Since they don't have no tools and they're not forced to bring it because they're not mechanic, that's what the problem is. Why we're bringing this in the table again? If to help the school district to understand this could be an issue for those folks who want to learn and escalate in the position, they can do repairs. Since they don't have to be working with somebody else's tools, we have already conflict with two are misplacing and leaving them in the buses, and they have, discrepancy about being used somebody else's tool, and it creates a problem. If they are an employee who they're gonna be eventually escalating in the system, why not to have their own tools and just get ready to start learning and their own tool with the help to be a mechanic? And it being a conflict, I'm just bringing it on the table for the school district to analyze it, and they will take so much stress in the floor between the helpers and the mechanics. And we never had that before. Now we have it. I don't know how it happened. It was removed from the contract years ago. But as a foreman, I'm seeing it every day, and it's a conflict between the helpers and the mechanics.
I wonder if it was removed from the contract, or maybe it was just given to them just because they were employees and they thought they were included. I'm not sure, because things usually don't come out of the contract, right?
Yeah, I had not, in the past, decade, I've not seen, there's never been a
Right.
concession
Striking
on behalf
somebody
of the
from
union. Yeah.
getting money, yeah. Okay, so overall, in general, what you're saying is you're hoping that they can get the tool allowance so that they can have the tools needed to advance should they be seeking advancement opportunity.
As a helper, they're supposed to do some repairs in the shop too.
Right.
If they're not forced to have tools, the first thing they're gonna tell you, like I always say, I don't have to have tools. And then you have a person on the floor with no tools, then you have to force, pretty much, have somebody who is willing to help them to let them use a tool. And that creates a conflict right there. And then you don't have no morality to tell them anything because you don't have no language to support that. Now, if they have the way where they can have tools and it's in writing, then now if they don't have the tool, that's different. You can do some about. But if they don't have to have no language, to support them to have tools, then you can't do anything.
Got it. All right.
I mean, the way we look at it is, and I would assume the district looks at it the same way, would be it's sort of a quasi-apprentice program that you're basically hiring transportation helpers on with the sort of expectation if they want to advance, they'll become the fleet mechanics of the future.
Shane, any questions? Okay. All right, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. On the payout date, I also noticed that in your proposals, you did request June. Being that we do run on a fiscal year, I don't think we would be able to pay that until the next fiscal year. I understand it would, at least until it starts. So looking to change the date, I think it's paid out in like December, is that correct? So it was paid in December, but the proposal is asking for it to now come again in June.
I would say this, absent caucusing with my folks, what we're trying to do is figure out sort of a regular schedule of when that's paid out. And I know historically, some had said December, January, February. Honestly, it's probably just due to once paperwork was processed and obviously, the district is able to allot it. What we're seeking is just to have some clarity so that there wouldn't be I didn't get it yet, does that mean I don't get it come January, come February? I'll
So
say
you
this.
don't- okay.
I don't have anything tied to June per
Okay.
se as a must, but what we're looking to do is regularize the process.
Okay, I understand, just as long as we have a date added to the agreement.
Exactly.
Got it.
I'll say that people historically would prefer something around December than any other month for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Okay. During last session, we did provide the food service managers being assigned to an additional location. I'm just wondering if you have any feedback or if there's anything else that needs to come back to us to work on in order to advance this.
Not today, but I think we're pretty close.
Okay, perfect. We are making progress on your other proposals. We're working through that, and a lot of them are salary related. So we will be in a future meeting bringing, something back on those. Okay.
Yep.
And now I will turn it over to Ms. Frederick, our Chief Financial Officer, who's going to give you a overview of our budget status.
All right, so I'm going to give you an update of our FY22, where we stand, and then also FY23, because the session has ended, and so we have positive information, which you also presented, the requirement to increase, or the mandate to increase all workers to a minimum of $15 per hour, no later than October 1st of 2022. So this is just a reminder that Florida still is significantly underfunded in terms of education compared to other states. So the most recent information available from the national census as of FY19 is Florida ranks 45th in the country. And we expect that we're going to stay around that rate. And it's just a sobering reminder that even though we have significant increases in our property values, we don't see that increase like in the municipalities and the county. Ours is tied to whatever the state funding, the state legislature agrees to fund education. So looking at FY22 budget, we had, this is a format I believe that you've seen in the past, but we're funded through the Florida Education Finance Program. And when you look at the first row there, number 1, that shows our increase in Palm Beach County, the increase in enrollment. So the increase in enrollment for this year was 3,900 students, 3,851 students. So somebody looking at that is going to think that that increase was in Palm Beach County district-operated schools. But that number includes district-operated schools, charter schools, as well as the voucher programs. And so I'll show you on the next page how that our enrollment for district-operated schools actually remained flat, but the increase was actually in the voucher program and in the charter schools. So we had an increase in our base student allocation. The base student allocation, that's row 5 there, of $60.44, because there's a small adjustment for the cost of living is a little bit more in Palm Beach County, so we do get a little bit more than some of the other counties. That's not a significant increase in the base student allocation. And that's the one allocation where we have flexibility in how those funds are used. You can see all of from row 7 down to 22, those are all restricted funding streams. And because DOE mandates how we spend the allocation they give us. So we have reading has to be spent on reading. Supplemental academic instruction has to be spent on activities that DOE approved for SAI. Safe schools has to be spent on activities within the statute that are restricted for safe school activities. And you can see that there are 2 rows that I have highlighted. Row 17 is the funding compression and hold harmless. And last year in FY21, We received, it was a brand-new adjustment. The district received $9 million in additional revenue. We didn't expect that that was going to continue, and we were right. If you look at the next column over, it's 0, because we did not receive that funding again in FY22. So when we were going into the FY22 year, we set that aside as one-time funds. So part of that increase in our fund balance, because we did have an increase, was all related to one-time funds. Then row 22 is the emergency order funding adjustment, and we received in FY21 $46 million more revenue than what we actually generated. And the reason for that is because of enrollment. So as part of the pandemic, we lost 6,500 students. And what DOE did is they said, well, we're going to hold all districts harmless because they were receiving some federal funds. So they did not actually adjust and reduce our revenue based on the loss of those 6,500 students. So we received $46 million in extra money in FY21, and that we did not receive this year because they then aligned our revenue in FY22 based on our actual enrollment. So when you're looking at the other categories, so the tax roll, I mentioned that the tax roll did increase, but that does not result in an actual increase in funding. We still had an overall decrease in our funding. So our total funding actually decreased by $36 million. In looking at before taking into consideration the adjustment for the amount that we're passing through to charter schools as well as the voucher program. So I mentioned the enrollment breakdown, that the enrollment looks like we went up nearly 3,900 students, but you see that for district-operated schools, we actually went down by 30 students. Charter schools went up by about 600, and the bulk of the increase was in the voucher program, where they went up by 3,258 students. And that money is money that originally would have come to the district that is now being allocated and dispersed to mainly private schools in the county. And so that was an increase in a pass-through of $34 million. That's not going to the district. So in total, we lost $67 million in revenue compared to the prior year. So when you look at starting with a loss of $67 million, you say, well, how did we balance our budget this year? I mean, we were proactive in going into, through the pandemic, where we did start to reduce and align our staffing based on enrollment. We did not take the full adjustment. We reduced our staffing at the school sites by 50%. We also reduced staffing within our department budgets as well, because we didn't know that we were going to be held harmless from the state in FY21. So we were trying to be proactive to know that we could have been facing that reduction of $70 million back in FY21. So we also made reductions on the department side as well. So since we started making reductions, we started with the loss of $67 million this year, but that money that we received from the state, we knew that that was one-time money. So we're excluding that. The funding compression of the $9 million net of the charter pass-through, I can exclude that as well, because I knew that that was not going to be something that that was going to be recurring. So we were looking at a loss of $16 million this year. We also then had an increase in our FRS rate of 0.08%. So we had an increase in the pension that we had to pay of $8 million. We also had an increase in our FPL bills. So the FPL rates went up effective July 1st of this year. That annualized impact, it's going to cost us $6 million as a district for the increase in rates. So just for the first 6 months of this year, we're going to see an increase in rates of $3 million. But we did have some savings because, like I said, we started to align our staffing in FY21, where we reduced school staffing by 50%. And then in FY22, all of the units that we let schools keep over and above what they generated, we moved to the Esser federal funds. And the reason why we did that is because we didn't want to eliminate positions if the students were going to come back. We wanted enrollment to rebound, and that was what the expectation was. So we wanted to be very careful of the number of positions that we eliminated to make sure that we had resources available to meet the needs of the students. So we moved over almost $14 million of staffing into the Esser funds. We did have an increase in our vacancy rate this year, and this represents teachers, so instructional staff, as well as non-instructional staff. And you faced it at your school sites. There have been more vacancies this year than in previous years. We always budget a vacancy rate, but the vacancy rate is higher than previous years. So we do have some savings there of $11.6 million. And then we've used our Esser funds to expand our summer school program. And so something we used to pay for summer school out of the general fund, that's something that we put in those federal funds, those federal of COVID Esser-related dollars, and so that was a savings as well. So once you add all of that up, we're at a surplus of $3 million, and $2.7 million of that is for the teacher compensation categorical, which is where DOE gave us money specifically to increase the pay of teachers. So that's really the only recurring money that we have available in FY22. But this does not include that we had an increase in our fund balance of $100 million. So all those one-time funds that I was talking about, we then saved that money and we put it into our fund balance, and it increased our fund balance by $100 million. But just like thinking of your savings account, if you spend that money on your one-time money, your savings, on something that's going to be recurring that you have to pay every single year, it's just going to keep spending down that one-time money, that savings account that you have, if you're not replenishing it, if you're not putting more money in it. So in looking at our fund balance, this shows you that it's a $102 million increase, and that's because we did shift some expenses into the Esser dollars, as well as those one-time monies that we received from the state that we then also had made cuts at the same time, so that's why we had those one-time savings. And this is just showing different districts across the state. And there are 7 districts that we call the Urban 7. So they're most comparable to Palm Beach County. And the one that we like to highlight is Hillsborough County Schools. Hillsborough County Schools is that purple line up there. And you can see that they used to have the highest, what we would say, fund balance in the state. It's called the financial condition ratio, and that's what the state uses to compare school districts to see if they're in financial emergency. And if that starts to get below 3%, the state starts monitoring the districts, and then eventually they may come in and actually take you over if they think that there's fiscal mismanagement. So you can see that at Hillsborough County Schools, how quickly they spent down that financial condition ratio. So they went from having the highest back in 2008 to now in FY20 and FY21 having the lowest financial condition ratio. And they did that because they had some one-time monies, and they had a lot of recurring salary expenses, and they weren't making adjustments for it. So they were seeing that, hoping that they'd see an increase in enrollment or hoping they'd see an increase of additional revenues, but they never actually realized that, weren't making any changes, and so they just kept spending that savings without replenishing it. And so eventually it's going to dwindle down to nothing. And they were at risk for the state coming in and taking over at their district.
That's the cautionary tale of cautionary tales in Florida.
Right now, it is.
In
it definitely
the past
is.
decade, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
We bargain in Pinellas County right next door, and it's a constant conversation about that.
Yeah, and completely unexpected. They used to be the envy of all school districts. The school district of Palm Beach County, we're the orange line there, and you can see that even during the Great Recession, for those of you who are here during the Great Recession, our fund balance increased, like it is right now, and then we used that to spend it down strategically over several years to help soften eliminating staffing and other different issues to give some time for enrollment to rebound, revenue to rebound. So you can see in FY20, same type of description or same type of pattern where our fund balance is going to go up, and then the plan is that it would strategically be spent back down again. And with those ESSER funds, you might have been hearing this on the news, it's possible, but calling it the ESSER funding cliff, because we're receiving, as a school district, $600 million in these federal funds. About $500 million of that is for district-operated schools. We have to pass that money through to the charter schools as well. But there are additional costs related to COVID that we know are going to continue, that we're going to eventually have to absorb back into the general fund, because these funds are only available through June 30th of 2024. And so our health claims have gone up significantly as a result of COVID. You know, our hope is that we're going to continue to monitor the health claims, and that we'll start to see a decline in the health claims, because in our district, we've been very fortunate. We haven't had to increase our health premiums for 10 years on one plan, 9 years on another plan, which is really unheard of when you compare us to other districts, other entities, not only in Florida, but I would say across the country. And we've always trended well below whatever the national trends were for healthcare. But now we're actually modeling the national increase. And so we're hopeful that we want to give time to monitor it, see if our claims are going to come back under control. But if they don't, right now we're taking those health claims and we're pushing some of those health claims into all those that are COVID related into those ESSER federal funds. Summer school. We've expanded our summer school program. It used to cost us $5 million a year. We're now spending $10 million a year on summer school. So that's an additional $5 million a year that we're spending on the summer program. So if that's something where we're seeing a benefit, that it's beneficial to the students, that's something that we might want to consider continuing even after the ESSER dollars end in 2024. Just supplies, custodial supplies. We're spending more on soap. We're spending more on paper towels. We're spending more on cleaning detergents. We're buying a lot on wipes. So those general costs have gone up. We're able to use ESSER dollars, but once those ESSER funds go away, it has to be funded from somewhere. We've added some additional initiatives, 24/7 tutoring. We expanded our co-located mental health providers. The air purifiers that we have at each of the schools and each of the classrooms, those cost $6 million to install those in each of the schools, and then it costs $3 million a year to replace those filters. So that's an annual cost. We have health screening tests and equipment that we bought for the purchase for the students. And so those tests are ongoing tests, because they don't just test for COVID, but also test for flu, and could also test for others as well. The healthcare district would be able to expand that if they wanted. Those tests could cost up to $2 million a year for testing the students. So just those costs add up to $32 million that potentially would have to be then reabsorbed and paid for out of the general fund once those federal dollars go away. And that's just some of the dollars. And so the Florida Department of Education released a letter in February, just a couple months ago, just making everybody aware, be careful of putting recurring funds within these federal dollars, because you're going to have to pay for them at some point. And these are ones that are just new costs, not including, things that potentially we could have put in and shifted over to Esser. This just shows you our enrollment, so that you can see that our enrollment dropped from 20 to 21. The district is the blue bar there. And you can see that we had the drop of 6,500 students, and we've stayed relatively flat. We had a loss of 30 students, but I would consider that flat when you think of we have 160,000. But what's concerning is the top bar there, which is the yellow. You can see how quickly that's increasing. So from FY20 to FY22, it's a significant increase in the voucher students and those students that are participating in the voucher program. And that could right now exponentially increase much quicker than charter schools and overtake the amount that we have enrolled in charter schools. So that's something that we have to continue to monitor. This is just an overview of our salary increases over the past 6 years. And this is something that I know a chart that you've seen in the past, but the column that's new is the change of enrollment. So we've been able to give, on average, 3% increases every year for the past 6 years. And that really is tied to our enrollment, because our enrollment, we've been seeing an increase in enrollment. The decrease that we had of 6,500 students was the first time we had declining enrollment in over 10 years. So we were able to give those increases because we did have, and we were seeing an increase in enrollment. So that's an overview of where we stand for FY22. So for FY23, the legislative session is over. We did have some bills that passed. So there was a conforming bill, which was Senate Bill 2524. There's a lot of information in there. They threw in a lot of changes at the last minute, some flexibility on how we can spend some of those restricted funds from the state in the reading categorical, and some changes in funding, clarifies some issues related to compensation, some changes with charter schools, and also some changes in campaign financing, which impacts how we'll be able to promote the referendum that the school will be going to renew in November. So that referendum that we have for the district has to be renewed by the voters every 4 years, and so we'll be going back to the voters in November. The board approved the resolution in March, on the March 23rd meeting, and it will be going to the county, for the county to approve on May 4th. In looking at the budget, it was very positive. The base student allocation increased $214. And what the legislature mandated is that we need to use that increase in the base student allocation to increase the minimum hourly rate to $15 per hour by October 1st of 2022. There were some, and so we were very pleased to see that, because there was an increase in the base student allocation to cover the $15 per hour, and then there was also an increase in the teacher compensation categorical, which is specifically for the teachers. So the legislature was not only recognizing teachers, they were recognizing teachers, the instructional staff, as well as the non-instructional staff. There was the potential that we were going to see a reduction in the FEFP for something called the Putting Parents First adjustment, which was a negative,
Punitive.
yes, you can say that, strictly punitive to the 12 school districts that mandated the use of masks at the beginning of school. And so they no longer had it as a reduction in FEFP, because initially we were going to see a reduction in our funding from the state of $28 million. What they did do is they shifted, they reduced the base student allocation a little bit, and then they also took away a reserve that they had set aside for growth of enrollment, and they put that into a school recognition program that was not funded in the previous year. And then they're going to say that the 12 districts that mandated masks are not eligible for that $200 million. So even though it wasn't a reduction in our FAFP, it's money that we're not going to be able to receive. And that was money that would be given to the school sites, if you remember school recognition, and usually all staff would be able to participate at the school sites receiving that in the form of a bonus. But as of right now, the 12 districts, including Palm Beach County, will not be eligible for those funds. Then the legislature also increased the Florida retirement system rate, because that's not something that we control. It's mandated by the state, by the legislature. So there was an increase of 1%. So last year we had an increase of 0.08%. This year it's an increase of 1%. So that is actually a $10 million increase in Florida retirement system, what we have to spend for Florida retirement system as a district. So I mentioned increasing the minimum hourly rate to $15 per hour. So this shows the impact of increasing the hourly rate by bargaining group. And the total impact to be funded by the general fund is $12.1 million to increase everybody to $15 per hour. And then looking at all the other funds, which is primarily school food service, but there are some other funds that would be impacted, that increase is $4.1 million. So looking at the budget in detail, again, we have an increase in students of 3,800 students, but that includes district-operated schools, charter schools, as well as vouchers. There's that increase in the base student allocation, which for Palm Beach County is $230, because we have an adjustment for the district cost differential, or that cost of living. And then highlighting the row 22, the increase in the teacher compensation program. Our increase is 16.6 million, but that includes the pass-through to charter schools as well. And so, in looking at the enrollment breakdown, you can see on row 39 there, the increase in district-operated schools is only expected to be about 360 students, compared to a potential increase in charter schools of almost 1,000, an increase in the vouchers. That's really where we think the growth is going to be, which would be 2,400 students. We actually expect the growth in vouchers to be more than that, and but unfortunately, the increase that we proposed to the state was not approved. They only approved 900 of the increase that we requested. So the potential negative downfall with that is that the state is actually under projecting, potentially statewide, the growth in the voucher students, which means that if the enrollment actually comes in higher at the state level than what was projected, then what the Florida Department of Education does is they then just reduce all districts' funding in order to address that increase in enrollment. And since they took away the reserve that I told you in order to help fund the school recognition program that we're not going to be a part of, there's no way to offset it.
The 28 million?
The 28 million, correct. So we're looking at an increase in district funding of $68.9 million. And if we look at just looking at the base student allocation and that increase of $230, the impact of increasing to $15 per hour takes away $74. Enrollment growth, because we do have, with 360 students, we are adding enrollment back, and we also have, and you'll see, it seems like we're adding more in staffing back than we should for 360 students, but that's because of the increase in the number of ESE and ESOL students that were identified from the time that we originally allocated the students at the start of school versus the time we pulled the enrollment for the projected school budgets in January, February. So it wasn't that we didn't have those resources were being funded out of the federal Esser program, but now we're going to have to pull those back in and pay for those out of the general fund, because now they're actually generated through the allocation. The increase in the FRS rate, it represents $61. The increase in the electricity is $18. So that increase in the BSA, you can see how quickly it gets spent down to where there's an increase of $24. And there are other items that were of other unknowns, but it just goes to show how quickly it's spent. So it's starting with an increase of $68 million. We have an increase in our FRS rate of $10 million, so we have to take that off the top. We have to increase, since we have an increase in revenue, we have to increase our reserve of 3% in order to comply with board policy. We're going to have an increase in our FPL rates for that annualized rate increase of a total of $6 million for the year, since it started in January. So we had $3 million in 22, we're going to have another $3 million in 23. We also had an increase in staffing of nearly $8 million. So you can see the amount related to just the basic increase in enrollment is about $850,000. We had added a new school, Blue Lake School, so we had all the administrative and school-based staffing that we had to add for that school. And then really the increases in ESE and ESOL related staffing of $6 million. So that leaves $44 million of additional funding in FY23. But we know that we have that categorical, the teacher categorical of $14.7 million. That's the amount that DOE gave us and said you have to spend it on instructional staff. And then also they told us we have to increase the minimum rate to $15 per hour. So that's $12 million. And so that leaves $17.5 million available in the budget. So our FY22 budget fund balance is expected to increase slightly this year. We expect it to increase because our revenue does cover the expenses that we have right now. We are seeing that schools are, those restricted monies that we have to keep set aside at the schools, they're not spending as much of that money because they have other funds available. They have those federal grant dollars that they can spend. So we can see that they're saving those AP dollars, and so those restricted type funds are increasing, which is going to increase the amount of fund balance we have or savings we have, but we have to keep that tracked to the schools. It's not money that we're able to use. We're also able to, we had savings related to shifting some costs into the Esser funds like health claims. But I can say that the board knows that it's very important to them, that they know how hard that everybody's been working, and they know that it's important that we not just give a one-time bonus to employees, and they want us to really work on providing a recurring salary increase. So because we have that positive information from the state in FY23, knowing that we're going to be able to increase and have the funds available to increase the minimum hourly rate to $15 an hour, we really want to work towards providing a 2-year salary proposal. So I'm not able to provide you a proposal today. I wanted to give you the overview of where we stand with the FY22 budget and FY23 budget, but know that we are looking for a recurring increase in FY22 as well as FY23. So then the next time we meet, we'll be able to bring a proposal forward that we can then discuss.
Yeah, my air quotes there were, you said positive, that last slide, because, clearly looking at the, what's happening, I wouldn't have necessarily, I would say you and the board must be very much eternal optimists because I don't read any of that as incredibly positive budget information, though it is technically positive versus previous years. It's just got a lot of other factors. But so for folks, if you're paying attention, based on the positive budget info for 23, the district's looking for a 2-year, or would you even go 3-year? Probably not.
I don't know that we could go 3 years. I mean, it's something I can definitely look at, because what the board is looking at is that in terms of for us to, justify recurring increases, we do have a significant fund balance that we have built up, and our revenue is tied to enrollment. So if we want to say we're going to be eternal optimists, we would expect that enrollment is going to start to rebound. Having everybody understand how important having the students come back to the school district and what that means to us. That means more revenue that we can then give back to you. And so the more revenue we have available, that creates recurring monies coming in, and so that helps to offset any recurring increase we're going to give. So we already know what our revenue is going to be for FY23, so that's why we want to be able to give a multi-year proposal for 22 and 23. 24 is a little bit more unknown because we need to know what's going to happen with our enrollment. But the fact that DOE, really the legislature, mandated, gave us money and set it aside specifically for non-instructional personnel, I know that the board was just so, it was unexpected to see that they were recognizing not only instructional staff, but non-instructional staff, understanding the impact of needing to have a living wage and being able to increase that minimum wage to $15 per hour was very, from what we're dealing with in the past, was very positive to have all employees at the school district recognized by the legislature.
Yeah, I agree. On our end as well, it was, we, through our lobbying, we, recognized that it was probably going to come, but you won't be shocked to hear me say, we approve of that, we like it, we love it, but also at the same time, we've got the sort of compression issues, as you might imagine, for those who've been here 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's its own concern related to that. We can both cheer the fact that it happened, but also recognize we've got a sticky situation with, somebody who's worked there for 19 years is making 30 cents more than somebody who's got there a year ago.
And unfortunately, that piece of it was not funded.
Oh, of course not.
But at least we do have the increase to the $15 per hour. At least part of it was funded. It's better than having nothing at all.
Oh, agreed.
And I just want to reiterate that the board does feel that it's very important that we do come back with a recurring increase, and that's why we just wanted to take the time to be able to give you a 2-year proposal, because we want to make sure to include a recurring increase for not only '23, but also we're planning to offer one for '22 as well.
Okay. I have a couple quick questions.
Sure.
In the beginning of your proposal, you had referenced reduction of staff. Basically, I'm assuming that was done through attrition, like somebody retired, you didn't fill the position.
Correct. It was all through vacancies. Yeah, we didn't actually do any
Layoffs, yeah.
layoffs. No.
And the secondary question to that is, and I did see there was an expected allotment of new positions for Blue Lake. And is there an expectation that in the next year's budget that you'll see some of those vacated positions come back? Or is it going to be basically tied to whether or not you meet your minimum staffing?
No, we're going to have to continue to align our staffing based on enrollment. That's what we've always done in the past. The past 2 years, we just have taken a step-down approach because we didn't want to, like I said, take all the staffing out of the school sites and then have the students actually come back the next year. So we only took back 50% the first year. We took back 50% this past year. And so this year, we're fully aligning based on enrollment. But it's all not laying anybody off. It's all through just normal vacancies, normal attrition.
Yeah. And probably the use of transfers accordingly.
Yes, yes.
You'd also referenced, in a couple different slides showing that there's some one-time money available. And obviously, there's some cost components tied to COVID, which I think you showed about $32 million is to be expected year to year to year. Now, obviously, none of us has a crystal ball. We can say whether there's another variant coming. And there's the sort of, end date of use of Esser funds by, you said December 31st, 2024?
June 30th of 2024.
Okay, June 30th of 2024, meaning everything that's not spent goes back to the feds?
We have to have it fully spent. So we do have it fully budgeted at this point. We do have some vacancies in some of the positions. About a third of the positions are vacant. But we do have, we did give $1,000 bonuses, and so that was funded out of those Esser funds. We have, the bulk of the funds are tied to unfinished learning. There's a portion of the Esser funds that has to be utilized for re-engagement of students. So bringing them back to school and then keeping them engaged in school so that they stay in school. And there's a portion of it for the cleaning of the schools, the sanitation. That's a big piece where I thought that we would start to see a decline and we have not. That's been maintained. So that's, like you said, we don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. What I thought was going to happen isn't what's happening, but doesn't mean that it's not going to change next year.
You'd also referenced some summer savings. Was that due to not running your typical program back in 20 and 21?
No, we actually expanded the program, but we paid for the whole fund program out of the Esser funds. And the only reason why is because we couldn't split fund it.
Sure.
So that's why the whole program. So that's a one-time type savings. It used to cost us $5 million for summer school. Now it's $10 million. But we have to monitor participation. So if participation continues, that's why I was saying that might be an additional cost of $5 million to bring it back in, because if we want to maintain that program, if we're seeing the participation and benefit of it.
And then you had referenced, now obviously, I hate the vouchers and you probably hate the vouchers. Everybody hates the vouchers. I hate the charters. You hate the charters. Everybody's on the same page about that. But the recognition that you guys are saying there's an expectation of enrollment to go up between 300 or 400 students?
For district operated
23.
schools, 360 students.
Okay. How is that calculated? Is that just based off of demographics, like knowing the ages of the population?
Yeah, we have a planning department. They go through a very detailed model of what the births are, how old the students are, how many we're expecting to have in kindergarten. And that's where the voucher program has complicated that
Recapped
a little
it, yeah.
bit, because now there's no requirement that the students actually have attended a public school. so they can go in straight into kindergarten. So it's, our models that used to be very reliable in the past, it's harder to trend those out. So we do our own modeling, have our own system, and DOE has their model as well that we utilize. And so we have to then, we compare their models to ours, and then we have to propose an enrollment increase to DOE.
Okay. From my side, does anybody have any questions around anything you've heard or seen in the PowerPoint? Go ahead, Gary.
I noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, now when they brought the lotto in, they were saying they were bringing the lotto in so it could also help the district. But what I saw when you started the presentation, that the lottery thing across there was blank.
Right. So there was always a very small amount of that money that went to K-12 education. They, in the past, gave us enough to fund our district to operate for 2 days. But it's not that the money was not going to education, it just wasn't going to K-12. It was going to Bright Futures and other educational programs. So it was funding educational programs, just not K-12.
So someone call it a promise not kept by the legislature.
Exactly. That's the next thing, because when I recall, when you register your kids, the teacher will send out this information, and they wanted you to bring double supplies so that kids that didn't have would have, which is fine. But, I'm like, how is it they're getting away with not doing what they say they're gonna do? Who's gonna hold them responsible? But besides that, like you just explained, it's going to Bright Future.
And other educational, right, so it is going to education, just everyone automatically thinks it's going to K-12 when they say that.
Okay, my other, this is a comment. In Alabama, during the summer, kids that are required to go to summer school, the parents have to pay for them to go. I know here, you all are saying, okay, education is free. Good, fine, but if that's gonna become an issue in the future, you may wanna look into that, cause other states are doing it. It's not like we wanna deprive anybody of education, but it's gonna help one way or the other.
And there is, part of the funding that we receive, like the different categorical funding, so supplemental academic instruction, that can be used to fund summer school. I mean, we're already using it for SAI teachers, but the state would say they are giving us money for it. It's just we spend more than what they actually give us, yes. Just like with transportation. Yes, they fund transportation, but we spend 2 to 3 times what they actually give us in funding for transportation.
Yes, and I understand that, because I gotta give Mr. Shane a prop right here. Last summer, even with the pandemic, the majority of us did work, and we worked over the 6 hours there. So I could see that, not only in transportation, but in other areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but ESE student, everything, yeah, we spend more than what we receive. And then there was another question.
Donna?
I have a question. How many charter schools are there?
We have, I believe it's 50 charter schools. We have one that closed this year, so we might be at 49.
That's my first question. And out of all those charter schools, how many charter schools have ESE children?
We do have some, at least, I want to say 3. I'd have to go back and get you the number of that are specifically geared towards more like cluster sites.
All,
Well, they all have ESE students, but there are ones that have
More
a
than
high
that.
population of ESE students. The cluster sites. So there's Palm Beach School for Autism. There's right, Believers, Golf. Yeah.
That's why I'm asking. I'm ESE and I work in a lot of the schools. My question is, what's going to happen to those students
that participate in our summer program. And so we send out communication to the charter schools, and they have to pay the school district when their students participate in our summer program.
Gouge 'em. Tell me what?
I know that at least two of the summer school, everything is starting to come out now. So what is going to happen now, because I'm looking at this budget, is the school district going to cut just this summer positions because of everything that's going on? And those students that are exceptionality, are they going to have someone of non-instructional with the teacher to take care of them?
No, we are not. We are funding our summer program out of the Esser federal funds. And so it's the same program that we had last year, which was an expanded program. We are not making any reductions to our summer program. And I'm not proposing, based on this budget, that we're making any reductions.
Just
The budget
asking.
for FY22 is balanced. It's going to be a slight increase, but our FY22 budget is balanced based on the reductions and changes we've made. FY23 is a very positive budget from the state. So we're not planning to make reductions. All we're going to be doing is, like we do every year, pre-COVID, aligning our staffing based on enrollment. Based on the 11th, always come the 11th day of school, we go through and we adjust what the staffing should look like at the school based on the actual enrollment. And so if we see an increase in enrollment, that's what I want to see. We're going to actually add additional positions out at the school site. And we don't only do it 11 days into school. If we have schools that are seeing growth from now throughout till the start of school, we'll readjust their calculation and their staffing based on the students that have actually registered. So yeah, so based on this, we're not proposing to have a decrease in our budget. It's how much we're going to have available to provide staff a recurring increase. So that's what we're working on right now. And so and we have the potential now to do a multi-year proposal for not just FY22, but FY23, because we know we're going to have recurring money in FY23, but we also want to do a recurring increase in FY22. So we just have to finish finalizing what that proposal is going to be.
Yes, because usually there is a growth in that particular area in school. And we're always getting students in, even after the 11th day, we do get students in.
And I understand, and that's why you saw such an increase in the staffing in ESE and ESOL, because we had an increase in the identification of students from the start of school through the time that we actually pulled the enrollment for projected staffing for next school year, for FY23 school year. We pulled all the ESE students at the beginning of February, and that's what we based our allocation on, our staffing allocation on for FY23. So it wasn't the staff wasn't there. The staff, we had just moved them to the Esser fund, so now they're just getting moved from that federal fund back into the general fund because the students were identified, so the resources were generated. If that, I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah. So what I'm gathering from, your explicit statements to us is that there's this one-time funding available, plus the district expects to be able to make a 2-year wage proposal.
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, you've got our proposal in hand today to review. When do you think you're going to be able to put that on the table? Are we talking in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Can we get back to you on the date? But I would like to move quickly.
Yeah. So would we. Both parties would.
Yeah, so we would like to do that, but if we could get back to you maybe tomorrow with scheduling some dates.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Because we want to get the money into the hands of, you've been waiting a long time. So, you're January 1st, CTA is back to July. But we want to try to get the money into the hands of you as quick as possible.
We both share that desire. So I want to take a caucus
Sorry,
on
what?
our end, but I know we are scheduled another, 40? Go ahead.
I was just asking, do they have any idea, have you all even discussed it?
Discuss salary proposals?
Yes.
We've had some internal discussions because we have been at the bargaining table for quite a while. But we have waited quite some time to make sure that we had a full picture of what funding looked like for next year. And also, if we hadn't waited, well, we would be rushing back to the table with the, October 1st deadline to implement the $15 an hour wage. So but we will get back to you as soon as possible.
Yeah, there's just
Well, we
complexities with
understood
the
about
increase.
$15. Now, we understood about that because we have been well educated on that due to Joy. But we're just talking about now what the district, with everything that's going on, what you all think or what, the proposal should be.
Well, we'll take a look at your proposal, and then we'll come back with what our proposal is.
Y'all aren't leaving until Carrie holds you up by your legs and shakes out anything.
Okay.
Alondra?
I just would like to say that I've been on the bargaining team since 2012, and I just have to compliment that this is the first time that we've had a visual, and I really, really respect that, and it makes us understand and feel like we're more a part of what you all are doing because we are able to see what you are talking about as opposed to, well, we don't have it, or we have this and that, other expenses. I really, really compliment you on the presentation. This is the first time I've ever seen this, and it really makes sense when you can see it. And then I know that you all are working hard at trying to get things together for us and for the district, and I appreciate that, and I just wanted to let you all know that.
Well, thank you. I thought it was a little long, so, so I appreciate that.
It's okay. Yep.
With the Esser funding, when will the district start absorbing the programs and the positions that the Esser fund?
It would be fiscal year 2025, so July 1st of 2024.
Thank you.
So it gives us time to plan as well. And that's why it's just making sure that everybody's aware and knows that this is just a potential of what we have to deal with.
Right, behind the scenes.
How,
Correct.
I don't necessarily want to get this on the record conversation, but, knowing our legislature being our legislature, right, that I've watched in the higher ed, because we bargain on behalf of state and community colleges and universities, that the legislature loves to claw back anything they can in any given session, right? What I'm hearing from the district is that, hey, you've said it twice now. It's like, hey, we want to get you money. Hey, we want to land this and start that process. We're not obviously in session, though. There's a special session probably going to happen next month. I don't anticipate that being a clawback session, right? But how worried is the district from a CFO point of view that anything that any pot that just seems to have a little bit too much in it is going to be targeted by Tallahassee?
It's just hard to answer because you don't know how they're thinking. This is an election year, and that does help as to why we saw what we saw.
Yep.
But like the being penalized for the masks, no one expected that. It kind of came out of the blue. Then it was, it's not going to really happen. But still, it ended up that they did take away the reserve. They did fund it. They took away the reserve. They reduced the base student allocation could have been higher if they left that money in there. You never know what the legislature is going to do. The fact that they put the funding into the base student allocation is always positive. That's where we want them to put it.
Same.
The teacher categorical, the fact that that's still something outside of the base student allocation, always concerns me. I don't see them reducing that. But we'd much rather see it in the base student allocation, which is where they put the increase of the $15 per hour.
Yep.
And then the increase in the FRS it's still slightly underfunded. So I expect over the next couple of years, we're still going to see an increase in the FRS rate. We have no control over that. And you see, it costs a lot of money.
Yep.
You know, it's gone up significantly. So, I mean, those are my concerns. And the increase in the FPL rates, that had nothing to do with inflation. That was effective January 1st. And it was because they were able to finally increase their rates. So now are they going to have the ability to keep increasing them every year? You know, you just don't.
Expect it, yeah,
You just don't know. You know, who are we going to go to other than FPL?
exactly.
You know, so we spend $34 million a year on electricity.
So with that being said, okay, we're the workers. We have homes. We have to pay FP&L. We have to pay Palm Beach utilities. And just like you all, utilities are going up. Ours are going up too.
Yep.
Everything is going up. Food going up.
We have a common foe, yes.
Yes. So that's what we say. And when they say affordable living, what is affordable living here in South Florida?
We hear you, we understand. We are taking all that into consideration.
Can I ask you a question? How long you been with the district?
About 20 years?
Okay. So I've been here 28.3.
Who's counting?
And in my 28.3 years, 26 of the years, I've been sitting here. And I just want to ask, and I'm quite sure the young lady in the brown outfit right there, she's been here a while. The young man right here, been here a while. I would like to put y'all's shoes on, because I'm quite sure if you wore my shoes, you would leave the school district. Wouldn't nobody have to tell you to leave. You would leave because of our salary. Not only mine, everybody else's. In the next 3 to 4 years, I'm planning on retiring. And with my retirement status right now, if I live to get 100, I have to get another job. I saw when my mom and dad retired, they was able to live on their retirement until the day they died. That's not gonna happen here. And for us to work like we're working, I know it's not fair. But y'all just go home and think about it. 30 minutes, take 30 minutes and see if you was making our salary, where would you be today? Okay? I just want you to do that. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
But think about it.
Thank you. And most of the people that are working in my department are not youngsters. We are older. Okay, so that might be a consideration. You don't want to lose the older generation, because I will say to you, the older people or the older generation, I don't know how to say it specifically without, I don't want to upset anybody here.
Veterans.
Experience, thank you, are able to handle what we handle every day than those that are younger than us. They cannot. And I'm including everybody at this table, all of us. And I'm also including those that are in the classroom, non-instructional. When we have a student that I can tell you that can be very challenging. So I want you to think about that also when we deal with it every day. And since the school I'm working in is a cluster site, we have a lot of students. So on an everyday basis, when we walk into that school, it's a new day. We don't know what's going to happen. And the same thing holds true in the summer. There are a lot of us that are older, and everybody at this table, I'm sure, works in the summer. We have to work in the summer as well. Because if we don't, we can't pay our bills. And that's what I'd like to put out to you, to think about that. Because the younger people, and I'm going to be real honest with you on this, cannot handle it. The older people can. We've had people walk out and quit because they could not handle it. So when you're sitting there thinking about it, I would appreciate it if you can think about those of us that have been in the school district. I'm in the school district 18 years.
That's why I'm trying to get some dates, like ASAP.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, we do appreciate your input. We do take these things seriously, and no, we understand you. We do. I want to thank Ms. Frederick for the presentation, because I do believe it's very valuable for everybody here to understand what it takes to run this machine, right? It's a lot. And it's also, I think, one thing that stands out and that is connected to what everybody wants to see is wage increases, is student enrollment. And we saw where where we lost 6,000 students, resulting in 60 million plus. That money would have possibly gone towards that, right? So, that is something to really consider, and that we do have to do our best, everybody, to continue providing that service that keeps our kids in our schools, maybe attracts some new ones to the district, or get some of our students who have left us to return. So, but I do hear your concerns, and I can assure you that does come up, and that is considered when we have these internal discussions. Mark, did you want to have a comment? Do you have a comment?
Thanks, Tim. I just wanted to again emphasize your point, as Tim did, and I've been here a few years, so thank you for noting that.
He's the steady constant.
Something that one of the steady constants, you're right. Thank you. Sorry. Sorry about that. So one of the things you may not know, each year we prepare information that the superintendent and other district leadership use to go to Tallahassee, as your union leadership does as well, and say, hey, here's living wage data, here's where employees are, and so forth, on behalf of all 23,000 employees, so that we can try to pay fair wages. But we're limited. The limiting factor is Florida. I think we fund, out of the 50 states, the funding for K-12 education is somewhere around, Ms. Frederick, what, 46th or?
45.
45th out of 50 states. So let that soak in for a minute, because we agree with your point. If the state would fund K-12 education in the state of Florida, just at the median, 50th percentile, we'd be able to raise salaries a lot more toward a living wage, and we would love that. So I just wanted to reiterate to you that you're asked for us to think about that. We think about that every day. That's our job. And we think about that and prepare data to go with the superintendent, as do other superintendents in the state, up to Tallahassee to say, hey, we're 45th out of 50 states. Can we do a little better? So I just wanted to empathize with you and say we feel you, and we need your help to try to do that. When it comes time to vote and have all our voices heard, that's where we vote and make our voices heard. So thank you for your comments. We appreciate that.
Yeah, the irony is not lost on us that we're, Ms. Fredericks said it's a positive year, but even with that positive year, we're still not even in the, we're 45 out of 50, even with a positive year. Like, that's obviously the people who are going to trumpet, hey, it's the best year in a long time for education, but that follows many, 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 many bad years. So.
Well, and the increase in funding for the vouchers.
Agreed.
They're included in there, so.
Yeah, the poison pill of K-12 funding.
Isn't it true that at one point we had so many charter schools, that those charter schools that were not doing that well or were rated not that well were going to close down?
We do follow the statute, and it's very prescriptive on how we can non-renew or close charter schools. So we do go through that process. There is one charter school this year that is voluntarily deciding to close their doors. But we cannot just go in and close a charter school. We have to follow the statute, and like I said, it's very prescriptive.
That, and if they go above and beyond, you can expect that Tallahassee's
They have.
going to respond accordingly.
We have been challenged in the past for doing that.
Hi, I just have one thing to ask, that when you're sitting and considering the salary, we're looking more for the hourly rate than a percentage in reference to your consideration of our salary increases. As you know, we came dollar amount and not percentage amount. So if that's something you can meditate over, it will be very helpful to our peers.
We did see that. Thank you.
I don't have anything further unless anybody else has any questions or anything. And I realize we're probably 20 minutes from adjourning. What I'll do is get back with you, Tim, on some dates that would allow us to both go into the economics from the district's counterproposal to us, as well as kind of finalize some of the other remaining items we have open.
That sounds great. All right. Well, I'll look forward to getting those dates and then getting something on the calendar as soon as possible. And I just want to again thank everybody for being here today, for sharing your input and helping us come together here. So I appreciate it all and have a great day.
Guys, on our end, let's take a 5-minute